let's start the first turn of the game. The first thing we're going to do is advance the Blessings deck. Every player on their turn will advance the Blessings deck. So you can see that the more players you have, the fewer turns they're going to have. We've turned the Blessing of the Gods, but that card in itself does nothing. It's just a timer. However, some cards within the deck may refer to this card. If that happens, I'll explain it then. But for the time being, it's a card turned over, no effect. Valeros is starting. And the first thing that you can do on your turn after advancing Blessings deck is give a card to another player if there's another player at your location. He doesn't want to. He's got a shield, a sword and some armour, so he's pretty sweet, and he's got one blessing. So we're not going to give any cards. Next we could move locations, but we don't want to. We want to stay here at the Rusty Dragon, weary from the perils of the Lost Coast. Now Valeros here, being at the Rusty Dragon, has the option to explore this location. And we've got to explore, that's what we've got to do. Alright, that's the only way to get through and find the henchman and the villain. So let's explore, and all we do is turn over the top card and see if we have a boon, good stuff like weapons and spells, or a bane, bad things like monsters and villains. We've turned an ally. There's a good chance we're going to get some allies here at the inn. This guy's called Sedak Drokus. And if you find a boon card, like weapons, spells or allies, you can make an attempt to acquire them. Acquiring boons takes skill. In this instance, charisma or diplomacy. And the number 5. We need to roll a die representing our charisma or our diplomacy and roll a 5 or more. Let's have a look at Valeros's cards. Valeros has a charisma of D6. Ignore these ones, alright? These are level ups. D6. What that means is we get to roll 1d6. So we're only going to get a score of 1 to 6. So what's that? 1 in 3 chance of getting 5 or more. However, he also has diplomacy, and that's charisma plus 2. So now we've just upped our chances. If we roll 3 or higher, we will get 5 or more. Now we can, if we wish, improve our chances by using things like blessings. Blessing of the Gods here says that we can discard this card to add 1 die to a check, and the die you add is the one that we're rolling for our basic skill check, the D6. The question is, do we want to use that blessing to acquire Sedak Drokus? What his ability? He helps us acquire allies. It says recharge this card to add 1d6 to your check to acquire an ally, or banish this card to return an ally from your discard pile to your hand. Okay, so he's pretty good at getting new allies, the Bard. But I'm not that bothered. I think it's too early to start using blessings just yet. So Valeros and his companions enter the Rusty Dragon. Valeros is the first to the bar, where he sees this bard, Sedak Drokus. He approaches him and starts conversation. And using his diplomacy, he rolls a 2 plus 2 from his core diplomacy skill. That's less than 5. Sedak Drokus is not impressed and turns his back on this half-plated stranger. Normally now, this ally that we failed to acquire would get discarded back to the game box. However, the Rusty Dragon has this special text. At this location it says, if you fail a check to acquire an ally, you may put that ally on the bottom of the location deck. So let's do that. Rather than Sedak being unimpressed and leaving the Rusty Dragon, he stays in the corner of the inn, and we may encounter him again at a later point. And that kind of ends Valeros's turn. He's explored the location. Now we could, if we wished, use our blessing. It says that we can discard this card to explore our location once more. And alright, we've only just started. I'm going to keep it as it is, and we'll move on to Linny's turn. Before we do, just a quick note about the dice. So these blue ones are the ones which came with the game, and I've just grabbed this little 1d6, this orange one from my store, and I'm using this to record the hard value that we add to our die roll. So in Valeros's case with diplomacy, it was charisma, the d6, this one, plus 2. So I used this die and I just put it to 2 to record the fact. And this helps me because sometimes you're doing plus 2, then plus 3, and then maybe plus something else, you know, and then these things kind of accumulate, and it helps to just keep a track. So I find I use a d6 to record those bonuses to my roll. Right, Linny's turn, and she's going to now step into the Rusty Dragon and explore. So first, at the beginning of a turn, we advance the Blessings deck. Linny steps forward and explores the Rusty Dragon. It's another boon. It's a longsword plus 1. Hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But this is going to be tough to acquire, this weapon. We need strength or melee 9. Now Linny, she's not terribly good. She's not proficient with weapons at all. Her strength is d4, and she doesn't have the melee skill at all. If you don't have a skill, then it defaults to 1d4. So strength d4, and we need a 9. Well, we're not going to get a 9 from 1d4, are we? So, is there anything we can do? We really want to have a crack at this, because Valeros would love this sword. Now, Linny has this couple of rules down the bottom. You may reveal an ally with the animal trait to add 1d4 to your check, and you may discard a card to roll d10 instead of your strength or dexterity for any check. Okay, so if we discard a card, then we can roll a d10 instead of a d4 as our strength. So let's see, is there anything here? This one might be quite useful against the goblins. The cure is going to be good. Let's use guidance. So we're going to discard guidance to give ourselves a d10 instead of a d4. So here's our d10. It's still only 1 in 5 chance running a 9 or a 10 on that thing. So let's use Linny's other skill of revealing an ally with an animal trait to add 1d4 to our check. Here's her hand, and we have the dog, and the dog has the animal trait. Reveal just means we show it. Yep, we've got the dog, here it is. It's back in our hand, job done. That adds a d4 to our roll. Now let's see if there's anything that our companions can do to help us. So Valeros spies Linny eyeing up a longsword which has been left in the corner of the bar. He says, "That's a fine looking sword, Linny." He looks to the heavens and the blessing of the gods, which says discard this card to add 1 die to a check. This goes to his discard pile. Remember, it's 1 die, the base die that we're rolling. We're rolling a 1d10 for our strength, so it's 2d10. Finally, Linny, summoning all her strength to lift the longsword, mutters some ancient words. She's going to use a strength spell. Discard this card and select a character. For the rest of the turn, add 3 to that character's checks that use his strength die. If you do not have either the arcane or divine skill, banish this card. Well, Linny does have the divine skill. It's written here under her wisdom. She's very wise. So we're going to discard strength. I'm going to leave it there for a moment and I'll come back to it in a second to explain why. So having cast this spell, we get to add a 3 to Linny's die roll. Now that may seem like a little bit of overpower using that spell, but you know, there's a good chance, and I've been burnt too many times. You know, I've only got to roll a 2 here, a 3 here, and a 2 here, and I've lost the longsword. So at least with this now, as long as I get 6 off this die roll, I've got the longsword, because we really want that for Valeros. Okay, let's roll the dice. And what did I say? This is one of these crazy D4s where the number's at the top instead of the bottom. So it's 3 plus 1 plus 1, that's 5. With our 3 bonus, that's only 8. Maybe someone spots Linny at the last minute when she's trying to grab the sword and distracts her. She's failed to acquire the long sword. This is now discarded. Such a shame. We simply put this back in the box. When you see these things go by, especially after you've invested so many of your cards in it, man, this is where the game really plays with you. These weapons are few and far between and hard to come by, so when they come up, it's nasty when you see them slip away. Okay, so we've cast a strange spell. This would go to the discard pile, but it's got a recharge on the bottom here, and most spells do. A recharge says succeed at an arcane or divine 8 check to recharge this card instead of discarding it. Arcane or divine 8 check. So we look at Linny's skills. She has divine, it's wisdom plus 1. Her wisdom is a d10. So we've got a d10 plus 1, because her divine is wisdom plus 1. Her wisdom is d10, and we need to roll an 8 or more. Okay, we did good this time. We've got a total of 10, so we get to recharge this card instead of discarding it. What does recharge mean? This is why I kept it to one side. A recharged card, instead of going to our discard pile, goes back on the bottom of our draw deck. Alright, so Linny has not really lowered her health. Casting that spell has not drained her of energy. Right, Linny's pretty cross. Nothing more for us to do now. Now we could, if we wished, use the dog right now. We could take our dog, and it says discard this card to explore your location. We could discard the dog and explore again. And that's quite helpful when you're, especially when you've only got 30 turns. You want to get through and explore as much as possible in order to find the things we're looking for, find the henchmen, find the villains. But early days, we're going to keep the dog for now. What we have to do instead is draw back up to our hand size. And we can, if we wish, before we do this, discard any cards we don't see as useful, but these are all good cards. So, hand size of 5, we draw 2 more cards. And she gets Blessing of the Gods and Amulet of Mighty Fists. That's a great item to have at this stage, early on. Excellent. Okay, Hask now. Let's advance Blessings. And Hask, well, I think he's had enough of the inn. He's seen Valeros being shunned by an ally and Linny caught trying to steal a weapon. Now I know there aren't any more weapons here, and Hask quite likes weapons. And let's try and we've already got through another ally, although he's on the bottom. Let's have Hask. Now remember the turn order. We advance the Blessings deck. We can give a card to another player right now. Then we can choose to move, and I think Hask's going to move over to the Swallowtail Festival. Sandpoint's town square is crowded with people. Locals and visitors alike celebrate amid good music and food, but tiny forms slip through the shadows and begin singing an obnoxious song. It says when we're at this location at the start of our term you may, blah blah blah, but obviously we're not at the start of our term, we've just moved here, so we're going to miss that. We're going to miss that special here. But basically if we hang around and we start our turn here, then we can reshuffle some cards from our hand into our deck. So let's have Hask explore. He's mingling with the crowds. And, oh my goodness, he's found Suto Kaijitsu, the half-elf rogue henchman. As Hask mingles amongst the crowd, he sees a face he thinks he recognises. One of Rip Nugget's blasted henchmen. Half-elves. Hask thought he sensed a foul smell. Monsters, henchmen and villains, they're banes. These are guys we're going to have to fight. So although he's a henchman, he's still a type of monster. And he's got a check to defeat. Combat 10, it says here. Characters themselves don't really have an innate combat skill. They can use their fists, and if they don't have a weapon, they will use their strength as their combat roll. So for Hask, that would be a d6. He's got a strength d6. But we can use weapons. Weapons can provide skills for combat checks too. 1d6, just trying to take this guy on with our fists alone, with a check of 10 required, is not going to be much good. We've got a light crossbow, we've got a short bow, and we've got an ally here, so we've got some things that might help us. But if you look at one of these bows, on the short bow for example, it says for your combat check, reveal this card, so you're not discarding anything, you're just revealing it, showing it that you've got it. Reveal this card to roll your dexterity or ranged die plus 1d6. And it says if you're proficient with weapons, you may discard this card to add 1d4 to the combat check at another location. Alright, so you're kind of firing your bow across to another location. So we can't use that ability, but we could use the short bow. The light crossbow is slightly better. It's going to give us dexterity or ranged as my combat check plus 1d8. So I think we're going to use our light crossbow. So it's 1d8 added on to our dexterity or ranged. Asks dexterity is a d8, his ranged is dexterity plus 3. Actually his dexterity is d8 plus 1 because we leveled that up. So his ranged skill is dexterity plus 1 plus 3, 1d8 plus 4. So we'll give him another d8 and we've got plus 4. However, this rogue half-elf, he's a bit agile. It says the difficulty of checks to defeat Suto with the attack or ranged traits is increased by 2. Now we are using ranged. So what that means is instead of trying to hit 10, we're trying to hit 12. So the question now is, do we feel 2d8 plus 4 is enough? Now the odds are kind of with us, because 12 minus 4 is 8. On average you would throw a 4 and a 4, that's 8. We might just get it, but that kind of means we've got a 50-50 chance, I think. Let's try and improve things a little bit with our archer ally. She's an elite human. Her power is recharge this card to add 1d4 to our ranged combat check. So let's recharge her. So she's going to help us now. She may come back because she's recharged, not discarded. And we add a d4. So we've slightly improved our chances over 50-50. I'm still not happy though. I still don't think that's enough. Defeating these guys is what this game is all about. If we can defeat this henchman, then we can close this location. Closing a location means that location is now done for the rest of the game. Why is that important? Well, because if we do find the villain, if we do find old Rip Nugget on his gecko, then he could escape. And he could escape to us to any open location. So we want to close as many locations as we can in order that the villain can't escape, or he's got fewer places to escape to. How do you close a location? So if we look at the Swallowtail Festival, it says, when closing, defeat or acquire the next card in the deck. If there isn't one, you may close this location automatically. Well, there is going to be one, because we're right at the top of the deck. So we don't want to push it too much. We've got to have enough in our pocket left that we can defeat or acquire whatever is there. So if it's a Bane, we've got to defeat it. If it's a Boon, we've got to acquire it. And then, and only then, can we close the Swallowtail Festival. And Lily, I know, has a Blessing of the Gods she just drew. So I think we're going to use this now. Discard this card to add 1 die to a check. Right, so we're doing a combat check. We can discard this. It doesn't have to be us, you see. It doesn't have to be Haas that does the discarding. And add 1 to a check. So let's have Linny use her Blessing to add 1 die. There's a whole mix of them here, isn't there? There's a d4, there's a d8. Well, which die do we add? Well, it's the one that we use for our base skill check, and at the moment it's ranged. And ranged is based on dexterity, which uses a d8. So that Blessing adds another d8. Now I'm starting to feel a bit happier. And you can probably see now why I added a whole bunch of new dice, because with only 1 d8 you'd be rolling the same one 3 times right now. Okay, I need 12. And I've got my plus 4. Got it, I think we've got it. There's 6, 9, yeah, 17, 22 plus 4. We got 26. So in the end, we did just fine, but that roll from Linny's spell casting is still raw in the memory. Suto Kaijitsu is defeated. It says, if defeated, we may immediately attempt to close this location. And yep, that's what we're going to do. And I've got a feeling there's something here in Hask's hand which may be able to help us a little bit. Spyglass. Discard this card to examine the top 2 cards of your location deck and put them back in any order. I can't recharge this, so it's just a discard, but let's do that. Let's discard this Spyglass. Okay, reveal the top 2 cards. A guide. Survival, wisdom, survival, or charisma, diplomacy. 6, okay. Or a monster, the Goblin War Chanter. What's going to be easiest? Guide, probably. Ask is a ranger, so he should be good at getting the guide. He's got survival, wisdom +2, so that's d6 +2. Our crossbow was a ranged +1d8. d8 +3 +1d8. Well, that's much easier. It's easier to fight the goblin than it is to acquire the guide. The risk is that if we don't defeat the goblin, he may hurt us. I'm going to go with the goblin, I think. Hang on though, hang on. For the encounter, you succeed at a wisdom 8 check. Oh, we've got to do a wisdom anyway. Oh, we can't use any weapons, and then we're only using a d6. And we don't want a goblin, because the other problem with goblins is standpoint. If you defeat a monster with the goblin trait, roll a d6. On a 1, each character or location takes fire damage. So there's still a chance, even if we defeat this thing, it's going to hit us with some fire damage before he dies. I think I've just changed my mind. That War Chanter, yeah, it's pretty bad. Let's go with the guide. So it's survival. Survival is wisdom +2, so it's 1d6 +2. I don't think anyone's got anything else that can help us. I think we burned up. Yeah, we burned up on abilities. I don't actually fancy my chances very much here. I need a 7, so I need to roll a 5. 1 in 3 chance. Yes! Yes! Sorry about that. We got a 5. See? I told you this game was fun. This is the thing. If you go into this with the wrong mindset, right? You're going in and you're just saying, "Oh, I just got to roll a die." Da, da, da. If you get involved and you know, play the game and play the story, then you're going to have fun. Hask then, having defeated Suto, the rogue half-elf, on his way back through the festival crowd, meets a human guide. He manages to convince her to join him on the quest to save Sandpoint. So where does the guide go? She goes to his hand. Alright, good work, good work. Now we've closed the location. When you close the location, check to see if there's anything here that might be a bonus when permanently closed. There's no effect here. We just turn the location over, face down. Now it's this kind of monochrome picture. And all these cards will get banished. Banished means back to the box. I mean, if you had been playing around, then the villain might have escaped here. So you've got to check there's no villain here, and then banish everything else. And these are all the things that... How did that happen? 2 Goblin War Chanters. That's about the worst monster combos we can get. I did give that a good shuffle, I promise. There's some blessings, a nice soldier here, a blast stone, a longbow. I'm sure that Hask would have loved that longbow. Never mind. Another blessing and a mystic inscription. Would have been a barrier that we had to defeat. So these things, they're gone now. They're out of reach. So we've lost a couple of good weapons in this adventure so far. These go back in the box. And now we know the festival's over. The villain's not heading there. Okay, Hask has finished his turn. There's no more exploring he can do anyway. His hand size is 5, and now he's got 4 cards in his hand. He has to draw 1 more, and he gets an Amulet of Life. That's really good. That's very good. Okay, we've completed round 1 of the game. We're 1/10 of the way through the Blessings deck, and that's a really, really great start. Join me next time as we begin round 2 with Valoros.